Welcome to Simply News, your trusted news source where we report the facts along with political and historic perspectives from all sides. Feel free to listen to this internet radio news podcast while you continue on with other tasks. Now, on to the news. Global Economic Outlook. In early 2025, global markets in January 2025 are grappling with a confluence of factors that continue to shape economic prospects. The tail end of pandemic-induced disruptions, shifts in energy supply chains, and ongoing currency reevaluations in major blocs. Many analysts point to the lingering repercussions of the 2024 slowdown, when inflation concerns and strict monetary policies converged across multiple regions. Yet, optimism persists in the form of renewed consumer spending, strategic government investments, and resilience in some emerging sectors. Manufacturing hubs, particularly in Southeast Asia, remain key players in global supply chains. The diversification strategies that began in 2023, when companies looked to reduce dependency on single-source production, have crystallized into more balanced setups. This has left global trade in a precarious, but not altogether dire state. Shipping costs remain above pre-pandemic levels, but the frequency of delays has decreased thanks to infrastructural upgrades and improved logistical planning. Source: World Bank, Global Economic Prospects, 2024. While the International Monetary Fund, IMF, once anticipated a modest downturn for late 2024, revised estimates as of January 2025 suggest that global GDP growth could hover between 2% and 3% this year, an improvement that remains delicate. Energy pricing has stabilized, aided primarily by increased natural gas production in the United States and renewed cooperative agreements among oil-exporting nations. Source: IMF World Economic Outlook, December 2024. Inflation, however, continues to challenge policymakers, hovering around 5% globally, with regional spikes in parts of Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Consumer confidence in Europe has rebounded somewhat, following major investments in clean technologies and the expansion of cross-border digital services. In China, consumption-led growth has helped temper the slowdown that began in the post-lockdown phase. The nation's new trade deal with Southeast Asian markets, signed in mid-2024, is expected to accelerate recovery across the region. Meanwhile, the United States grapples with a mixed picture. While job growth remains steady in tech and green energy, pockets of manufacturing have cooled as companies restructure to adopt automated processes. In the Middle East, the push for economic diversification continues. Investments in solar and hydrogen projects amplify the region's steady shift away from reliance on petroleum exports. By harnessing these new energy ventures, countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates aim to solidify their status as global investment hubs. Still, pockets of inequality persist, and debates about wealth distribution continue to stir political discourse. These factors combine to create a unique economic landscape. Some economists describe it as a patchwork recovery, with pockets of robust expansion contrasting with sectors still reeling from pandemic and geopolitical aftershocks. The next few months will likely hinge on central bank policies and unpredictable policy outcomes in major economies. Should inflation remain stubborn, a tighter monetary stance might slow progress. Conversely, a gentler approach to rate hikes could encourage both public and private sectors to invest confidently, maintaining momentum as 2025 progresses. As the world navigates these uncertainties, the consensus among leading institutions suggests a cautious but not pessimistic outlook. Smart policy maneuvers, especially around energy transition and technology, could set the stage for more sustainable growth long-term. Political impact and perception. Liberal perspective. Liberals see global economic interdependence as essential. They tend to support increased social spending to cushion vulnerable communities from inflation and applaud green investments that can stimulate job creation and cut carbon footprints. Progressive perspective. Progressives view the sluggish pace of equitable reforms as problematic. They champion more aggressive wealth taxation and systemic changes to address income disparity, calling for robust regulation of financial markets to prevent future collapses. Independent perspective. Independents prefer pragmatism, believing solutions lie in balanced budgets, moderate stimulus measures, and infrastructure projects that can generate immediate returns and longer-term stability. Right-wing perspective. Conservatives often focus on fiscal responsibility, cautioning that large deficits will feed inflation. They are wary of excessive regulation, contending that it stifles productivity. They also highlight national security concerns tied to complex, globalized supply chains. Christian right perspective. This subset echoes conservative economic stances while overlaying faith-based calls for moral stewardship of resources. Charitable outreach, welfare programs through faith communities, and family-first tax incentives are points of emphasis. Historic responses and data-based predictions. Historically, major shifts, such as those following the 2008 financial crisis, saw a surge in populist sentiment demanding accountability and reform. Source: Pew Research Center Archives on Global Attitudes, 2008-2010. This pattern suggests that continued inflation may stoke similar demands. Based on public opinion polls, World Bank 2024 survey, showing roughly 60% of respondents critical of economic inequality, we predict liberals and progressives, likely to intensify calls for social safety nets and climate-focused economic policies. Independents, expected to support moderate, consensus-driven solutions, leaning toward whichever policies offer tangible, short-term improvements. Right-wing and Christian right could amplify calls for lowered government spending and protectionist measures, focusing on safeguarding national business interests. Data references include surveys by the World Bank, 2024, on consumer confidence, IMF, December 2024, forecasts, and Pew Research Center reports on public sentiment during economic recoveries. SimplyNews.org hopes you found this reporting to be informative, enlightening, and thought-provoking. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow us on streaming and social media platforms where available. Looking for a deeper dive with more insight that considers all political perspectives? Check out our Deep Dives podcast for this news story on Facebook, YouTube, and other podcast platforms. Until next time, stay informed and in the know.